Starting from about 1998, my first visit in Taiwan, in fact, I got a series of residencies in China and Taiwan, which helped me to develop my interest in traditional Chinese music as well as culture. At the time, I was specifically interested in the guqin, which is an ancient type of Chinese zither. Even more specifically, the music notation system, which dates from the Warring States period, called jiangzipu. Jiangzipu is a type of hyphenated music notation which predates even the earliest Western notation by hundreds of years, which was interesting enough, but also one of the characteristics of this notation was that it was inherently focused on the physicality of the music. So you got a description of how to find a note rather than a specific note. And techniques were dealt with in that way too. You wouldn't be asked to produce a particular technique, you would just be asked to put your finger on a particular string and do a certain gesture. So it's inherently gesturally motivated, which I found interesting, particularly because my music itself was doing that. So it was kind of like a justification, if you like. My music after this time tends to be focused much more on the gestural level, the physicality of music making, rather than discrete notes, discrete rhythm. So the entire gesture is the most important thing for me. So my music tends to focus very much on levels of granularity, density, and from a formal perspective, I create my music from the inside out. So my modus operandi, if you like, is to think of an idea and then divide the idea in the same way perhaps that a human cell or a cell might divide, which creates two new possibilities or several new possibilities, which can then be divided again, creating an infinite number of possibilities potentially. So this means also that my music, the DNA, if you like, of my music is spread throughout the piece, because everything is based on everything else. So you'll find something at the beginning which is the same as something at the end or derived from it. So it's an interesting way of helping the structure hold together in a way that perhaps isn't so similar to the 19th century model of conceptualizing an entire work and then attempting to capture that at once, which I think is a difficult thing to do. It's a bit like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, where you try to nail something at the same time that your ability to nail something else goes out the window. As I found from the past, if I do try to conceptualize an entire piece of music, in the process of trying to capture it, I'll get further and further away from realizing it. So this is a way for me to counter that, and also to create a new, very interesting type of form, which for some reason holds together in a way which isn't conventional. And this piece developed over a number of years. In fact, it began in the UK, working with a UK-based guzheng player and a UK-based trio, where we did a series of workshops, I think back in 2015. The workshops were designed to for us to acquaint ourselves with this new sound world. It was quite magical, really, because the guzheng goes so well with the piano trio. It doesn't mean you've got a guzheng with a piano trio. It's a new ensemble altogether. So it's a bit like adding a new spice to a traditional dish. You get something completely different. So these workshops were designed to explore the opportunities, the timbral, notational, and conceptual elements of the piece, and also to see what we can get away with in terms of the level of virtuosity, specifically for the guzheng, because guzheng players traditionally tend to learn a piece before they play it. They don't tend to sight read in the same way that Western musicians do. So they have to immerse themselves completely in the piece. So they need a lot of preparation, whereas a violinist or a pianist will tend to be able to sight read and make a good basic sound straight away. So it was an interesting eye-opener into the different modes of working that the players have. I think that the workshops were also very effective from the point of view of helping me understand the dynamic levels concerned, because to me the guzheng was a very quiet instrument, but actually it's quite the reverse. It's a very penetrating instrument. Specific gestures are much more penetrating than other gestures, so it can be quite dominating at times, and other times completely sotto voce. It was serendipitous that the New Zealand trio at the time were also thinking of going to China to perform piano trio works with guzheng of the Chinese New Zealand composer Gao Ping. So I managed to finish this piece and present it to them, and we got a complete performance both in Wellington and Beijing, which was a nice thing to do. It's a very fusion sort of project, mixing elements of the East and West, so it was nice that it could be realized in both these countries. I think one of the most amazing things about being a New Zealander is that I'm not so bogged down in my sense of identity and my history. So for me to borrow elements from other cultures is more or less a New Zealand trait, I think. It's something that New Zealanders can justify. New Zealand is a very young nation. It's full of immigrants. It's a real fusion, a melting pot of different cultures, even more now than before. So in my mind, what I'm doing is inherently New Zealand. At the same time, I've got roots in Europe and England, and I think there's a rigor that I bring to what I do from that school of working. But it's a relief actually to be a New Zealander and able to blend different elements that appeal to me. Another characteristic, if you like, of New Zealand music is how extroverted it is. It's music that's positive and it looks forward, it looks outwards. And I like to think that that's what I'm creating myself. It's a great honor to be selected to be a finalist for this award. It's nice to have recognition for the work that goes into writing and organizing contemporary music concerts. A lot of it goes on my desk, and it's very time-consuming. And yet the outcome is a 10-minute piece, which might get performed once. So it's nice that some extra recognition and perhaps legacy can be added. Not obviously just for my music, but for all the fantastic contemporary music which is being created in New Zealand at the moment. It's a very diverse and exciting environment that we have now, even compared with 20 years ago. There's a lot of fantastic composers, all of which should be finalists for this award.